Ranjana Yasona Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashod Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astoro Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pravijacharya Astoro Srimad Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananti Goti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Naam Acharya Silaridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Sisi Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Navadvip Dham Ki Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Ki Samavaita Bhaktavrinda Ki Nitai Gaur Premanande All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. So today we read reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 7, text number 33. So to the word Patnya Uchu Yagna Ayam Tava Yagnaya Kena Srista Vidvasta Pasupatina Adya Dakshakopa Tam Na Tvam Savasayana Abha Santamedam Yagya Atman Nalina Rucha Drisa Punahi Patnya Uchu Yagno Ayam Tava Yagnaya Kena Sristo Yagno Ayam Tava Yagnaya Kena Sristo Ayam Tava Yagnaya Kena Vidvastapasu Patinadya Dakshakopa Vidvastapasu Patinadya Dakshakopa Tamnastram Sava Sayana Basanta Medham Tamnastram Sava Sayana Basanta Medham Yagnat Manalina Ruchadri Sapunahi Yagyat Manam Nalina Ruchadri Sapunahi Patnya Uchu Yagno Ayam Tava Yagyanaya Kena Sisto Vidvastapasu Patinadya Dakshakopa Tamnastram Sava Sayana Basanta Medham Yagya Atmanam Nalina Rucha Drissa Punahi Patnya Uchu Yagno Ayam Tava Yagyanaya Kena Sisto Vidvastapasu Patinadya Dakshakopa Tamnastram Sava Sayana Basanta Medham Yagnat Manam Nalina Rucha Drissa Punahi Patnya Uchu Yagno ayam tava yagnaya kena sisto. Vidvasta pasu patinadya dakshakopa. Tamnastram sava sayanabhasantamedam. Yagnatmanam nalinarucha drissa punahi. Patnya uchu. Yagno ayam tava yagnaya kena sisto. Vidvasta pasu patinadya dakshakopa. Tamnastam sava sayanabhasantamedam. Yagnatmanam nalinarucha drissa punahi. What? Patnya uchu. Yagno ayam tava yagnaya kena sisto. Shakopa. Idam. Yagnatmanam nalinarucha drissa punahi. Yagno ayam tava yagnaya kena sisto. Vidvasta pasu patinadya dakshakopa. Tamnastam sava sayanabhasantamedam. Yagnatmanam nalinarucha drissa punahi. Patnya uchu. Yagno ayam tava yagnaya kena sisto. Vidvasta pasu padinaja dakshakopa. Tamnastam sava sayanabhasantamedam. Yagnatmananalinaricha drissa punahi. Now uchu. Yagno kena sisto. Vidvasta pasu patinadya dakshakopa. Tamnastam sava sayanabhasantamedam. Yagnatmanam nalinarucha drissa punahi. To the word for word. Patnya uchu. The wives of the executives of the sacrifice said. Yagna, the sacrifice. Ayam, this. Tava, your. Yagnaya, worshipping. Kena, by Brahma. Srishta, arranged. Vitvasta, devastated. Pasupatina, by Lord Shiva. Adya, today. Dakshakopa, from anger at Daksha. Tam, it. Na, our. Tvam, you. Savasayana, dead bodies. Abha, like. Santamedam, the still sacrificial animals. Yagna Atman, O Lord of sacrifice. Nalina, lotus. Rucha, beautiful. Drisa, by the vision of your eyes. Punahi, sanctify. So, translation. The wives of the performers of the sacrifice said, "My dear Lord, this sacrifice was arranged under the instruction of Brahma. But unfortunately, Lord Shiva, being angry at Daksha, devastated the entire scene. And because of his anger, the animals meant for sacrifice are lying dead. Therefore, the preparations of the yajna have been lost. Now, by the glance of your lotus eyes, the sanctity of the sacrificial arena may again be invoked." Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Animals were offered in sacrifice in order to give them renewed life. That was the purpose of having animals there. Offering an animal in sacrifice and giving him renewed life was the evidence of the strength of chanting mantras. Unfortunately, when Daksha's sacrifice was devastated by Lord Shiva, some of the animals were killed. One was killed just to replace the head of Daksha. Their bodies were lying about, and the sacrificial arena was turned into a crematorium. Thus, the real purpose of the yajna was lost. There's more to that purport, right? Lord Vishnu, being the ultimate objective of such sacrificial ceremonies, was requested by the wives of the priest to glance over the yajna arena with his causeless mercy so that the routine work of the yajna may be continued. The purport here is that animals should not be unnecessarily killed. They were used to prove the strength of mantras and were to have been rejuvenated by the use of mantras. They should not have been killed as they were by Lord Shiva to replace the head of Daksha with an animal's head. It was pleasing to see an animal sacrificed and rejuvenated, and that pleasing atmosphere had been lost. The wives of the priest requested the animals be brought back to life by the glance of Lord Vishnu to make a pleasing yajna. Let's read the translation again. The wives of the performers of the sacrifice said, "My dear Lord, this sacrifice was arranged under the instruction of Brahma. But unfortunately, Lord Shiva, being angry at Daksha, devastated the entire scene. And because of his anger, the animals meant for sacrifice are lying dead. Therefore, the preparations of the yajna have been lost. Now, by the glance of your lotus eyes, the sanctity of this sacrificial arena may again be invoked. So, a Vedic sacrifice is not an ordinary performance. The demigods used to participate in such sacrifices, and the animals that were sacrificed, they were reincarnated into a new life. However, in this age of Kali, there's no powerful Brahmins. One, who can invite the demigods, and two, to give renewed life to the animal. And formally, nowadays Brahmins, you get, this, you see so many of them, and they're not very conversant with the Vedic mantras. But the way, the Brahmins in ancient times, they were conversant with Vedic mantras just to show their potency. But as we said, in this age, there's no such Brahmins, and therefore all sacrifices like this are forbidden. Also, you read in the Bhagavatam that horses are also sacrifice for horses. And what's that called? Asvamedha. And sometimes cows were sacrificed, not for eating purposes, but to give them new life, as we said, in order to show the potency of the mantra. And in this day and age, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is most effective, and it's a practical sacrifice. In recitation of mantras from the Vedas, they have to be done properly. And if it's done properly, then the performer gets relief from the reactions of sins. But if it's improperly done and not under expert management, then surely one has to become responsible for the animal sacrifice. Now, even we see sometimes, we go to campuses, universities, or laboratories, an animal is killed to investigate its therapeutic effects. But in these cases where the animal is killed, they are not revived. But in a yajna arena, in an arena of sacrifice, the animals are given a new life, just by this potency of this Vedic mantras. There was a nice word that I picked up in one purport that Srila Prabhupada wrote. The word Sipi Vishtaya appears in this verse. Sipi means the flames of sacrifice. In the sacrificial fire of the oblations are offered into flames, then Lord Vishnu is situated there in the form of the flames. Therefore, Lord Vishnu is known as Sipi Vista. So, this whole debacle, or this whole pastime that we've been following over a period of time, there are many lessons to be learned. Anger, humility, sacrifice, how to interact with devotees, the etiquettes. There's so many lessons to be learned. And whilst I was reading last night on this particular verse, I came across the Adi Leela chapter. I think it's 4. Anyway, this is a discussion. It's in the Adi Leela, I think. The discussion between Lord Chaitanya and Chankazi. It's very interesting, where the Lord had went to see the Chankazi, who was a Muslim, and the Chankazi was a very, very
But when Lord Chaitanya went, he hid himself in the room. And Lord Chaitanya noticed that. And then Lord Chaitanya raised the question to the Qazi, what kind of etiquette is this? And the same lesson is there in Lord Shiva and Daksha, the etiquette being transgressed. But the Muslim, the Qazi, he replied that you have come to my house in an angry mood. So just to pacify you, I did not come out immediately, but kept myself hidden. So we have, a lesson to be learned. Sri Raghunath ki jai. So yet there's a lesson to be learned that, when somebody is angry, you cannot really address them. And unless they're pacified. And then he responds that now that you have become pacified, I've come to you. And he says, it is my good fortune to receive a guest like your honor. So we find in the pastimes of Daksha and Shiva, there was as I said, a transgression of the etiquette. And here we see also there's a transgression of the etiquette. But the reason was that the Qazi was giving a very good reason. Then the Chand Qazi goes on to explain that how he's, in his village, that he was talking about Nilambara Chakravarti Thakur was his uncle. And Nilambara Chakravarti is your maternal grandfather. And by this relationship, you are thus my nephew. So in essence that, Lord Chaitanya is a nephew of the Chand Qazi. So, when a nephew is angry, so the maternal uncle is tolerant. And when the maternal uncle commits an offense, the nephew doesn't take it very seriously. So that's very nice. So in this way they talked. They talked to each other, and then the conversation ensued. So Lord Chaitanya is now addressing him as my dear uncle. I have come to you to ask you some questions. And the Qazi said, well, you're welcome to ask me question. Just tell me what is in your mind. So it's important, sometimes we may speculate in what's in other people's mind. And it's best to ask them. Because we may have a certain, perception that this is what's happening, but we may be completely wrong. So here we learn that lesson that, yes, tell me what's in your mind. And the Lord very nicely said that you drink cow's milk. So the cow is considered your mother. And the bulls, they produce grains for your maintenance. So therefore they considered your father. So if they are your father and mother, how could you kill them? How could you kill them? What kind of religious principle is this? And then he raised the point, on what strength are you so daring that you commit such sinful activities? So the Qazi is responding, he's saying, just like you have your scriptures called the Vedas and Puranas, we have the Holy Scripture, the Quran. And according to the Quran, there were two ways of advancement, through the increasing the propensity to enjoy and decreasing it. So the decreasing attachment is called, and we read in the Bhagavatam, Nivritti Marg. And the killing of animals is prohibited. So then, on the path of material activities, there is a regulation for killing cows. So if such cow killing is done under the guidance of scripture, then there is no sin, because it's based on the scripture. So so Lord Chaitanya is saying that, and then the Kazi challenged that, and he says, in your Vedic scriptures, there is an injunction of killing a cow. Now he's raising this point that what Prabhupada put in the purport. On the strength of this injunction, great sages perform sacrifice involving cow killing. Now that is not the case, because in the Vedic scriptures there is concessions for eating meat. Is that right, Duran? Is it correct? That's Duran. I met him, I don't know, about 19 years ago. It is said that if one eats meat, he should kill a goat before the goddess Kali and then eat the meat. So that's prescribed. So if it's, with that prescription, there's a lesser reaction. It's not that you don't get a reaction, but it's a lesser reaction. But you can't now go maintain slaughterhouses and butcher shops and go buy your meat. But as far as, cow killing is concerned, it is completely forbidden. That we know. So, because in the Bhagavad Gita, the verse in the 18th chapter speaks about the necessities of taking care of cows. So then Lord Chaitanya, he responds, he says, in the Vedas and Puranas, there are injunctions declaring that if one revive a living being, one can kill it for experimental purposes, as Prabhupada writes in today's purport. Therefore, like the great sages, then they killed all cows by chanting Vedic mantras, and they brought it back to life. It wasn't detrimental to the cows, but it was an act of great benefit. As we said earlier on, the Brahmins could do that. But now, Kali Yuga, there's no Brahmins that are so powerful. Therefore, the killing of cows and bulls for rejuvenation is forbidden. In the age of Kali, there are 5 acts of forbidden. What is that? The offering of horse in sacrifice, offering a cow in sacrifice, accepting the order of sannyas, offering oblations to the forefathers, offering oblations of flesh to the forefathers, or a man begetting children in his brother's wife. These 5 things are forbidden in the age of Kali. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, since your Muslims cannot bring cows back to life, then you are responsible for killing them. And therefore, you're going to hell. And there is no way for your deliverance. So cow killers they are condemned, to rot in hellish life for many thousands of years, as much as the amount of hairs are in the body of a cow. So we should not. Generally, like when we may have meat of a lower animal, but definitely not a cow. Definitely not a cow. So then, Lord Chaitanya is pointing out that there are many mistakes and illusions in your scripture. So after hearing the statements by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, The Qazi was arguments, the Qazi, his arguments, he was stunned and he could not actually put any other argument. So therefore, after some consideration, he accepted defeat. And then he responds that he says that our scriptures have been developed recently, not a few thousand years ago. And they are not very logical and philosophical. So this is very nicely explained, and I found that very interesting. That was in accordance with this purport. But then I thought of, how does this apply to us? Us now, like as devotees. So in a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in the Antya Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the body of a devotee is never material. It is considered to be transcendental, full of spiritual bliss. It's CC Antya 4:191, if you're looking for it. And in the purport, and today is Haridas Thakur's disappearance day. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is trying to convince Haridas Thakur and Sanatana Goswami that a devotee who has dedicated his life to the service of the Lord is never in material conception. Why? Because he always engaged in the service of the Lord. So his body is transcendental. It's full of spiritual bliss. Therefore, one should never consider the body of a devotee material. And one should not consider, like the deity on the altar worship, be made of stone or wood. Factually, that is Lord Krishna. And these injunctions are given in the Padma Purana, that a person who has this understanding, who thinks that the deity is worshipped on the altar is made of stone and wood, or the spiritual master is an ordinary man, and who thinks that the body of a Vaishnava, like devotees, who are fully devoted to the service of the Lord, belongs to the modes of material nature, then he's a resident of hell. So we have to be careful. And then it goes on to explain that at the time of initiation, when a devotee surrenders unto the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him as good as himself. So in our case, the transformation takes place. We're given a new life. And the new life that we're given, like how an animal is given a life a new life by Vedic mantras, a devotee is given a new life by the process of initiation. A new body. A body that is spiritual. That's what is given. And when the devotee's body is transformed into spiritual existence, the devotee in that transcendental body renders service to the lotus feet of the Lord. And the living entity is subjected to birth and death, attains immortality when he gives up all material activities, dedicates his life to the execution of my order, and acts according to my direction. In this way, he becomes fit to enjoy spiritual bliss derived from exchanging loving mellows with me. So this is the rejuvenation. This is the second birth. This is a transformation. When one takes initiation. Then in the 12th canto, or in the 11th canto, it's also mentioned at the time of initiation, the devotee gives up all material conceptions. And there's so much to be said, but I think we're running a little out of time there, you see. But let me just go to killing animals. Now, going back to the point of killing animal, Sometimes people derive pleasure by killing animals. Like in this room, everybody is seated, almost all vegetarians. Yeah? Who's eating meat? Nobody? Anybody eating meat? You do. So you must give it up, it's not good. Anyway, yeah. So once, Srila Prabhupada was in Calcutta and he was passing through an hotel and a man was cutting the throat of a chicken. How's that sound? And after being cut, the chicken was jumping. But you know what the man was doing? He was laughing. He was taking pleasure in it. But for Prabhupada, it was horrible. But he was taking very nice pleasure in it. And the half-cut chicken is jumping, but the man's son is crying. How's that description? The man was asking his son, "Why are you crying?" See, he felt nothing about it. So it's just a question of different qualities. One is attracted and one finds it very attractive, and the other is detracted. And this attractiveness is called mellow or rasa. So, how's the description? Terrible, huh? But we're describing it just to make the point that what a painful process this is. Killing. But in Vedic times, everything was done differently. And even, even when you do worship for Kali and, you sacrifice, I've done it, so I know it. I'm talking from experience on it. It's a very painful process. Very painful process. And Prabhupada, in another instance said, and I found this last night, that, and he quoted South Africa, that's what inspired me to just make a note of it. Because Prabhupada said there are still barbarians in the jungles. They just kill animals. And even now, and Prabhupada started speaking about the cows, and I'll just read this. He says, "I learned that in South Africa, before killing the cows, they take the last drop of milk." How's that? And then it is sent to the slaughterhouse. They are so expert that if there is still a little milk, they take it before her death. So remember, we mentioned that the cow is a mother. Would you do this to your mother? No, isn't it? Would you do something like this? No. So yeah, Prabhupada, he makes and he's quoting South Africa. Killing scientifically. Another point in the purport was talking about the false ego, and that is something that we have to really work on. What's the false ego? I am this body, I am so and so. The identity will always be there. I. But when you come to that point of realizing that I am spirit, and as we described the transformation when one goes through initiation process, his body becomes spiritual. We under the bodily concept of life, and that's false ego. And Srila Prabhupada in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he speaks about becoming free from false ego. And he says one should worship Shankarshan. The connection is that Shankarshan is also worshipped by Lord Shiva. The snakes which cover the body of Lord Shiva are representations of Shankarshan. And Lord Shiva is always absorbed in meditation upon Shankarshan. So to become free from false ego, one has to surrender. So that is how you can become freed from false ego. So I'll just skip that topic. That's quite a... Yeah, but false ego is definitely powerful and it's very difficult to overcome. And therefore, it hinders our progress as a devotee. Because if somebody is in the bodily concept of life, he's ready to blame others, isn't it? And thinks himself or herself to be right and other person to be wrong. Oh, he said like that, he's wrong. This tendency becomes very much prominent. But the way to come out from this process of false ego is to engage in this devotion to in bhakti yoga. What do you think of that, Duran? Duran is actually the brother of Devaki Radhika, whom I met first out there. He was going and he wanted a CD. I didn't have it. I told him I got it. He came back to my room and I took his details. And I asked him how many were in the family, and he had a sister. I said, bring it the next day. It was Janmashtami, right? Janmashtami, huh? He brought his sister the next day, and then we sat in Prabhupada's room and gave them the beads, and she surrendered to Krishna. So thank you for that. Yeah. So we were speaking about this false ego. So the more you engage in devotional service, the more we will become happy. And then we'll come to our real position. We are servants of Krishna. Servants of Krishna. But here, the important thing in this purport, it was talking about the wives were saying that Lord Vishnu should show his glance, his mercy upon the dead animals so that they can be rejuvenated and come back to life. But not Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there's an interesting discussion between an Indian man and Prabhupada. And the Indian man asked, the question, should we pray to Shiva first and then go pray to Krishna? And Prabhupada said that there's no harm. But still one should understand what is Shiva and what is Vishnu. That understanding must be there. Just like in the 12th canto, we often hear the saying, Vaishnavam yata sambhu. So in actual fact, he's our spiritual master. He's a Vaishnava. So we offer him respect. But if you take Lord Shiva to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is an insult. But giving respect to the spiritual master, but if you give me, and Prabhupada says, you are giving me respect as a spiritual master, but if you give me overestimation that you are the king of the whole world, that is an insult. That is an insult, that is not a prayer. If you offer me a prayer as I am befitting, then it is all right. But if you give me a prayer for which I am not befitting, that is an insult. That is an insult. So we must know what the position of Lord Shiva is. Because, we hear different things from different speakers, but just to reconcile it, as Prabhupada saw it, that's why I'm mentioning there. And so we shouldn't insult him in that way. That means Lord Shiva. Or the other person that Giriraj Maharaj was preaching, he was the first devotee to go to South India. And he had challenges, meeting many Shaivites, followers of Lord Shiva. And they were also, they were also followers of Lord Vishnu. But the Shaivites are mainly impersonalists. They follow an impersonalistic philosophy. Where God is not a person, doesn't have form. And, Giriraj Maharaj found it difficult preaching in this area. And he met the famous Mr. Ramakrishna. You've heard of Ramakrishna, right? He met Ramakrishna. But they were like backward, forward, they were having lots of differences of opinion. And, Mr. Ramakrishna was upset. But as he would go around and people say, you must meet Ramakrishna, you must speak to him, he's like a saintly person. But then again they meet and there was differences of opinion. But Srila Prabhupada, Giriraj Maharaj said, well, my spiritual master going to come shortly, so you could meet with him and raise your questions, or we can resolve these differences of opinion. Then, when Prabhupada came, then he asked Prabhupada, would you like to meet this person, Then Prabhupada said, okay. So they met. And when they met, Ramakrishna began saying, Swamiji, we've been having some discussion about the devotion of Lord Krishna and devotion of Lord Shiva. What do you say? Who is greater, Krishna or Shiva? Then Prabhupada replied in another way. He said that actually bhakti or devotion could not be properly applied to the worship of Lord Shiva. And he explained that bhakti is without any motive or material desire, whereas puja included service with a desire for some return. So there's a difference between devotion, where we are offering everything to Krishna for nothing in return, and puja, we want something in return. So he said bhakti therefore could only be applied to Krishna. He answered it like that. So Ramakrishna, he thought, well, what if someone is a devotee of Lord Shiva and worships Shiva simply out of devotion, without desiring any material profit? Prabhupada said that may be possible. But he gave a nice an analogy. He said, just like when a person enters a liquor shop. So somebody is going to a liquor shop, generally is taken that he is going for drinking. Isn't it? Although there may be some exception. So Prabhupada was a genius, the way he answered. And then he went on to give the example of the gopis who worship the goddess of fortune, goddess Katyayani, not for some material benefit, but for devotion to Krishna. But similarly, if somebody worships Lord Shiva with the aim of serving Lord Shiva, that would be bhakti. That would be bhakti. But people in generally approach Shiva for some material benefit. So although, Ramakrishna is prone to argue on points, but he was completely satisfied with Srila Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada answered him. So, it reminded me, one time we had to go buy some water that was only available in a liquor shop here in Checkers. So we went to the devotees, and people would think that we going to buy some liquor, but no, we went to buy some water for the spiritual master that was available there. Yeah. So one has to be very careful. Yeah, there's more to say, but it's really, I'll just give a few minutes for time for questions on this topic, but we can continue it some other time. But there's more to say on the topic. Is there any questions or comments on... if anybody like to ask anything? Okay.
So you mentioned the point that when one takes initiation, then the body becomes spiritual. Sometimes in our devotional practice, the body, becomes a hindrance. The body becomes a hindrance sometimes, due to whatever the cause may be. How do we should we still then identify, with the pangs of the body, or do we then say, no, we're not the body, we're spirit? How do we reconcile this point?
Yeah, it's like at the process of initiation, although we may we still have challenges with the body. Even you become diseased, and this example that we're talking about, where Sanatana Goswami was in a very diseased condition. He was in a diseased condition, and his body was oozing with pus, and it was smelly and very unclean. But Lord Chaitanya took it as it's very palatable smell, and everything is so nice, because he took it that this person's body, because he surrendered, it's very spiritual. Just like a mother doesn't feel bad, to clean the stool of the child. She takes pleasure in doing it. Isn't it? They don't feel it's bad. So it depends how it's looked at. And what's your second part of that question? I just want to clarify that.
So, it's basically how do we, when we have these hindrances and things, how do we still see our body as spiritual, or do we kind of associate with the bodily concept?
Yeah. See, at least theoretically we should accept that. Like how Sanatana Goswami was an elevated devotee, but still he's playing the role of an ordinary person. And Lord Chaitanya is reciprocating with him, because Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Lord, but he's also playing the role of a devotee. So he's seeing that exchange between Sanatana Goswami, that his body is totally spiritual. So somebody who's surrendered to the process, but having hindrances and obstacle, is still considered, because he's following the order of the spiritual master. That's what one of the, like how would we know somebody is a pure devotee? It's not that, he may not be in the level of bhav, but at least he's following the instruction of the orders of the spiritual master, then he's considered to be a pure devotee. So the hindrances, that doesn't mean if somebody is a pure devotee, there's no hindrances. There's always challenges in every step of our advancement in spiritual life. Prabhupada went through so many challenges and difficulties. You become diseased also. And then you'll say, well, Prabhupada also in the end was in a bad condition. Is his body spiritual? Yes, it is. Because the example given is, when you are absorbed in the service of the Lord, the example of the iron rod in fire. When you put the iron in fire, it becomes fire. It has all the qualities of fire. So as you get absorbed in devotion, then your body becomes transformed. It becomes spiritual. It's no more material. So it depends on the person how much he's absorbed in it. But at least when you took initiation, at least there's a start to the process. You are near the fire. But as you enter deeper into the fire, the iron or the body becomes more transformed. It becomes more spiritual. So the hindrance is always going to be there. We're going to have these challenges. And like the spiritual master's body, then you'd say, but why Prabhupada was in such a condition? Because the disciple is given an opportunity to serve him. That's why they get into this condition also. And when the disciple serves him in such a way at that crucial time, or towards the end, gets so much of mercy. So much can be said about it. So it's not that you're not going to have difficulties. There's always going to be there because it's a material world. Even Madhavendra Puri in the end was also in that condition, and Ishvara Puri was there to serve him. And Ramachandra Puri was criticizing him. And he didn't get the benefit. Just like that. Anybody else? Quickly, and we can... Yes, Saranga Devi.
Hare Krishna. So I was just thinking about the point that Maharaj made when he was speaking on Radha Astami about Bhakti Devi, and he says that Bhakti Devi is not different from Radharani or an expansion. So therefore, she is exclusively for Krishna and nobody else. So you cannot use devotion to another demigod because it's not possible. Because Bhakti Devi is exclusive to Krishna.
Correct, that's a good point. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay, so thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So we'll give you some books. You have some books? Mataji?